Hello.
Hi, we're live on Facebook. I'm Lorna Leibowitz, and I'm here with my good friend and legal counsel, Helene Hartig. She has 30 years experience in the real estate business, and we both can attest to the fact that
We are live.
we were 5'10" when we first started in this business, and this is what the
And we've
clients
shrunk.
have done to us.
We've been cut down to size.
So I wanted to invite everyone for a discussion this morning. There's a lot of excitement going on in the market, up and down. What are we going to do about these new tax laws? How is it going to affect the market? But more important, first, let's look out the window and say, how's the weather going to affect the market? Helene, you have your magic 8-ball on that?
Unfortunately, fortunately, I guess I'm not Mr. G, the weatherman, who's been very busy this past month. But in the old days, it used to be that people would never go to open houses when there was a little bit of snow, a little bit of rain, the blizzard, forget about that. But I think the lines have been blurred in today's market, and there's no one season when real estate is good to buy, it's bad to buy. I think whenever people are ready to either look for something or to sell their apartment, the new year is the best time, Christmas is over, time to get down to business, is when people start looking. There's really no special season anymore.
Well, that is true, and I do find that, but one of the things I do find right after the holidays, so everyone's out of the sugar haze and getting back to business, as you said, and anyone with families are thinking about, where are my kids going to school next year? So maybe we should focus on starting to upgrade to a bigger place or get closer to the school, or make it easier for childcare and things like that. That's sort of like the family style apartment. But in terms of the singles and the empty nesters, there is no season. You're absolutely right. It's when am I ready, and what can I expect the market to look like, and who's going to guide me, who's going to help me through this crazy process. So.
Well, I think the big issue, whether it's an empty nester, senior, family, is what do I want out of this building? And from a monetary viewpoint, from a legal viewpoint, from an amenity viewpoint, is this building right for me? And as an attorney, I'm not the broker. So with the broker, I would think the buyer or the seller, but particularly the buyer, shares what they want in terms of the amenities. My job is to make sure that the building has a clean bill of health, that they're solid financially, that there are no red flags, lawsuits going on all over the building, crazy shareholders who everybody is suing, problems which could cause a new purchaser a lot of money down the road. My job is to guide the purchaser into the right direction, but a broker's job, I think, is to find the right fit and the right match for their customer. And this way it'll be hopefully an easy board approval process, and the buyer won't call back 5 years down the road. You didn't tell me this, you didn't tell me that, this is wrong and that's wrong. I mean, you know more about that, Lorna.
Well, it's true, and I think today more and more everybody is so savvy, and they think they can go online and get all the information, but it's good to have guidance. It's good. I know one of the things that I've been focusing on in the recent past is finding out what's happening in the neighborhood, whether I'm representing a seller or a buyer. The more I know up front about the building that's coming on across the street, or possible renovations down the block, noise factor, is the view going to be impacted? Everybody wants to eliminate as much uncertainty as they can, which is not always possible, but you have to at least help your clients have realistic expectations. More and more, that's what everybody wants. And as professionals, it's our job to give them the comfort level that they need. Whether I'm telling a seller, you need to be keeping in mind the fact that there's going to be a brick wall coming up right in front of your living room window. I mean, God forbid, I hope that's not happening, but, let's be realistic. And if it's a buyer coming in and they say, well, they just knocked down the building across the street, what can I realistically expect the impact to be? Or zoning changes. I know de Blasio is talking a lot about that lately, trying to impact Midtown, the East Harlem, where I, recently relocated my family to. So, we all need, as professionals, to have as much information as possible and great legal guidance. And so I'm going to ask Helene to share some more of her expertise with you.
I just wanted to add that we can't look into a crystal ball. If we see a building knocked down across the street, we could reasonably assume that there may be a new building going up, and you can't say what the impact is going to be in terms of the light, the air, the sunshine, unless you can find, which sometimes you can, plans that may have been filed with the Department of Buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So there's certain things that even the best brokers and the best attorneys really can't find and really can't assure the clients about. You just have to tell them that with certain aspects, it's life in New York City.
Right.
I know that when the 2nd Avenue subway was being built, I live and work on East 86th Street. There was great hoopla about the area and how much it's going to do for the residential and the commercial residents. And instead, it took over 10 years. There was massive disruption all over the block. Now it's finally built, and it got off to a slow start, I think, a little bit in terms of the market. But people were waiting. When will it be built? And we thought we had an idea, but we really didn't know because we're very dependent on other people or on federal money, etc. Mm-hmm. So we can't always tell a client, whether it's from a broker perspective or a legal perspective, everything that they want to know, because we just don't know that ourselves. Certain other issues, as an attorney,
can I just interject something here? Because I'm thinking in specific about a listing I'm putting on 86th and West End, which is a building that's been there for a very, very long time. It's a pre-war, but the building directly next door to it, this is 545 West End. The next building was the school, and that has now been taken down, and what's coming up is a 16-story condominium. So what's the impact going to be on my listing? What's the impact of the building around the corner on 86th and Broadway? And some of this information, it's interesting to me as I try to do my due diligence, which is certainly not the same as the legal due diligence, but trying to help my sellers and my buyers understand what may or may not happen. There are more and more resources that are available, and I know you've talked to me about some of the ones that you've been able to help some of your clients with. So just
that's true. When I'm retained by a purchaser in particular, I try to have a holistic approach to the process. And when I do my due diligence, I'll go beyond the ordinary review of the certified financials, the review of the minutes, all of which are important and give you a different perspective, what's happening or not happening in the building, where the cash is at, or what it's been used for.
She's so good at that.
What some of the needs are in the building. But when I start looking on the Department of Buildings website to see how many violations are on the building, on the HPD website, it gives me a sense of how the building is maintained. I typically do a Google search on the building, try to find the building's website, look at the managing agent. Is it a reputable managing agent? Is it a managing agent in another state who doesn't really have a lot of experience? And some of it is subjective, some of it is just based on experience, but I try to give my client a whole sense of what the building as well as the neighborhood is all about. So I just go beyond what the traditional legal representation is. And also knowing who the managing agent is, knowing who the attorney on the other side is sometimes will let me know how long this will take, will there be a problem, what could I anticipate, so I can give either the buyer or the seller, if I'm representing the seller, a preview of coming attractions.
Well, that's the value of having a real professional. When you're acting as broker, you rely so much on the legal side to guide and help and keep a deal together that's meant to be kept together. Obviously, some of them are never gonna, happen. But usually by the time you have a signed contract, you're all pretty sure, that's giving your clients a sense of confidence in making the deal happen. So how about the thing about the tax situation?
Oh, the taxes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I wish I could say again that anybody knows with certainty, but one thing we've learned in the age of Trump is that nothing is very certain. Everybody was panicking. Not many people in the co-op and condo community were panicking at the end of December when mortgage deductions for any mortgage over $750,000, which is traditionally called jumbo loans, were eliminated, where building tax deductibility was eliminated, and nobody knew, including the accountants, what to expect. A lot of buildings were trying to prepay their 2018 taxes in 2017 as a result of Cuomo's Emergency Relief Act, which said that if you pay in 2017, you're protected in 2018. Then most co-ops and condos were advised that that just doesn't work because of the way the building pays their taxes. People are nervous. I think I've seen people in condominiums are actually more nervous than in co-ops, because in condominiums people pay their individual taxes if they don't have a tax benefit. But I think some of the benefits, looking at it only preliminarily, some of the benefits of the tax law may compensate for some of the drawbacks that people are foreseeing. There may not be as much deductibility in the tax arena, but in the corporate arena, for example, small businesses are being greatly benefited by the Reform Act and certain areas of real estate. For example, there's a concept known as 1031, where you can go from one investment property to another, and you can have a tax-free exchange. People will worry that that would be lost in the tax bill, but for some reason that was saved. So I think we sort of have to wait and see. I think real estate is always a good investment as long as you're buying the right real estate and you don't go beyond your limit in what you can spend and what you can do. As long as you do the due diligence, working with a good broker or a good team, a good mortgage professional is really what makes the difference. And one thing I wanted to mention is I think that whether it's the buyer or the seller, the best thing to do is to, before you even have a accepted offer, to put your team in place. If you're a buyer and you're getting a mortgage, have your mortgage broker, have your bank, get yourself pre-qualified so you'll be more attractive when the deal is done, and have your attorney in place so that the attorney can guide you even before the offer is made. If there's a little negotiating going on, you want the attorneys. I find the best client is an educated client, and the client that comes to me even before there's an accepted offer in either direction gets the benefit of my experience, and I can start talking to the broker even before a deal is accepted. I think it helps. It makes the deal be negotiated and go through more expeditiously. Sometimes they're looking at multiple properties, and an attorney could be helpful in saying, well, this is why I think that you should gear in this direction or another, even though it's the broker that's showing the properties and that works with the budget, etc.
So we work together. I mean, as you say, sometimes you have a buyer that you just know is going to be a great fit in a certain building, as opposed to the one down the street where, for whatever reason, maybe some political issue in the building or a personality issue. I mean, I actually was involved in a situation years ago where a board turned down that a colleague friend of mine was involved in because the buyer they put in front of the board was on the wrong political party. Talk about, being on the wrong end of a political situation. But in today's market, one of the things we talk about is this LLC situation, and I know that you're involved very often with buyers who, we get this request too. Will the co-op allow me to put the shares in an LLC? Condos may be a little easier. What's your take on that?
With LLCs in particular, sometimes celebrity clients wanted to hide behind an LLC because they didn't want people to know that they bought the co-op down the block, who they are, what their identity is. However, now you need to disclose the names of the LLC, so that doesn't 100% protect them. But an LLC or a corporation or a trust, it has the benefit of allowing flexibility. Some people are doing estate planning. They want to make sure that they don't have to go through a expensive and protracted probate process. In a condominium, typically there's a lot of flexibility.
Right.
It's easier to have a trust, to have a LLC, to have a corporation. Co-ops are more hesitant, even though it's not prohibited
But
by
isn't
the
it?
tax law.
I'm sorry. Isn't it more common now to see co-ops allowing those LLCs?
Yeah, I think that many co-ops allow, well, LLCs more you see it more in the area of trusts. And in either instance, you want to have safeguards. You want to see the underlying documentation. You want to have a personal guarantee so you know there's a live person, so you don't have to chase after some entity, especially if it's an out-of-state LLC, it's an out-of-state trust. But you need to have, that's where an attorney really becomes very important, to read the organizational documents, to make sure that there's somebody to sue, make sure there's inappropriate situations in escrow. But I think in many buildings, the feeling is that you want to make, yes, you want to know your neighbors, but you also want to make it as flexible and as easy as possible for people to purchase. So if it doesn't violate the law and you know who the players are and who's really purchasing, so people don't hide behind the company, then many buildings are beginning to consider what they didn't consider way back when.
Well, it's true, and I can speak from a personal example with a client where the building wanted the name of a person, an address. They wanted to have a certain amount of money in escrow and an ability to be able to sue in case the LLC defaulted. I mean, there's all kinds of things, and it's a minefield for a broker without an attorney to do the diligence and to guide the client and be able to set up and make sure that the client doesn't get taken advantage of. So this is where, as Helene was saying, and we both agree, having a team put together as you're starting, and definitely if you're looking at finance, you've got to have that paperwork together. You've got to have a mortgage broker already lined up. It's my responsibility, if I'm representing the seller, to make sure that any possible purchaser has the wherewithal. You know, it's all very well and good to make an offer, but it's got to be a bona fide offer. Are you going to be able to close if you get the approval? Are you going to be able to do it?
That's the issue. I mean, sellers are always saying, well, how do I know they'll pass the board? How do I know it's going to go through the board? First of all, the broker has more of an incentive than anybody, because if it doesn't go through the board, they've done all this work for many months for naught, and they don't get a commission because it's contingent upon a buyer being approved. More importantly, the reputable shops, I know for sure, Elliman, where Lorna works, Corcoran, all the big brokers, they always pre-qualify their buyers. Why waste your time if it's somebody who doesn't qualify financially, is just dreaming of an apartment? I had a kid come into me and he was turned down 3 times. He made offers for $200,000. He had $10,000 in the bank and no source of income. So of course he's going to be turned down. It was heartbreaking. And in the end, either he bought with his parents, I'm not sure what, or he just abandoned it for a while. But a broker has, a smart broker
we have an ethical responsibility to make sure that an offer, I mean, and if I'm not the broker for the seller, let's say I'm just representing the buyer, and I have to give this paperwork to the broker who's representing the seller, I mean, they're going to look at me like, are you serious? This guy doesn't have the wherewithal to do it. Where's his documentation? Where's his pre-approval?
It's not just the money. There are other issues as well. For example,
true.
If a building frowns on pied-à-terres, on people living there on a part-time basis, you need to know that right at the beginning, because if you've got a client that lives in Massachusetts and is buying it for their adult daughter, then that may not be the right building for them.
You mean the one with the rock band? That daughter?
Or if you've got a client that's a member of a rock band and the building has a very strict musical instrument policy, that's not necessarily the building for them. Even if the board accepts them, there might be something in the house rules or there might be a neighbor next door who complains about them. So it's not always the financial. Yet again, you need to take a global view of who the client is, what the client is looking for, and whether or not they're a good fit for the building.
Well, that's true.
If there's a no smoking policy and the client smokes 2 packs a day, well, not the building you want to move into. So it's just some of the issues that you see in buildings today.
Life in Manhattan. One of my favorite stories that came up in the last year was one of the buildings at the famed Lincoln Towers on the west side, where they have now certain breeds of dogs that are not permitted because they are aggressive. And one of them, I think if I have it right, was Maltese. And my little doggy is a blend. He's half Maltese and half whatever. And I said, oh, so you mean now with my little 10-pound dog, I would be rejected from this building? And people looked at me and they went, it's a good thing you're not moving here, Lorna, because you're not getting in. So
actually, sometimes big dogs like a golden retriever are more gentle than a little chihuahua that might get in on a rent restriction or a pit bull. But I remember one of the buildings I represent, they had a 50-pound weight restriction, which they thought was a fair way. And I got a letter that the dog went on a diet and now weighs, 45 pounds. Can the dog come in? Okay.
Can I get the diet plan, please?
So this is the diet dog. What if the dog goes off the reservation and starts eating again? But also the big issue now in buildings is therapy dogs. So I've seen situations where people want to get around a no dogs restriction and they come in with a letter from a therapist saying it's a support dog. And then you run into all sorts of requirements with the Americans Against Disabilities Act.
Right.
It's a very, very specific requirement. So if you know that this is a no-dog building, are you going to be the one who bucks the trend for whatever reason?
It's the no pet thing. You have to define it's not a pet, it's a dog, and it's my service animal. So, yes, we all know people that have taken advantage of that rule. We also know people for whom it's really a very valid concern. And there, too, as the broker, it's your responsibility to understand, if your client is really seriously entitled to this, well, then, you go full force ahead and you be the advocate for your client, and you say, you know what, we're not going to let the building hold that against you because it's legitimate, as opposed to the people are just sort of trying to get them to bend the rules. Speaking of bending the rules, I think this was such a great idea to do this today, Helene. I'm open to seeing if our people would love to hear more about you or more from the two of us. Maybe we could do this on a more regular basis, but I think for now we gave you a lot of food for thought. You have anything else you want to leave everybody with?
There's a lot of hot issues going on in the real estate market today. There's all sorts of issues with people with visas, foreign buyers. Before money talked, it didn't make a difference, particularly in condominiums. Today, banks are reluctant. If people's green card will expire, will they be allowed to stay in the country? Can people get a loan in the first place? Are they worried that people may not be able to get back in and then they'll default on their mortgages? All sorts of very interesting issues. It's a changing world, and it would be interesting to discuss these issues as they, minute by minute, play by play, as they occur. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Oh, thanks for joining me. And listen, guys out there in social media land, if you want to hear more from us, give us a shout out. Let us know.
Follow me on Twitter. Easy to find. Hartig Law.
Best Manhattan Dream Homes, Lorna Leibowitz at Douglas Elliman. Thanks so much for tuning in today.